Are you ready for some bollocks? For some Prolix comics bollocks?
I am.
Well, you're in the right place then. I'm Clive Davis, and who are you?
I am Nicholas O'Sheacon.
Okay, and we're talking comics.
Yep.
Specifically, this episode, we are talking Valerian.
Mm-hmm.
Or Valerian and Laureline, I think.
Yep.
Is the correct. By, here we go, Pierre, Christine, and Jean-Claude Mézières.
Yes, I think so.
Probably nothing like that at all. And,
no, and have one of your French mates come on and just dub those parts for you.
Right. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Suddenly it changes to, yeah, like that, like the dub of Hapkido.
Kido. Yes.
So this is actually the collected volume 1 translated in English, put out by Cinebook.
Okay.
Which is how I came across this. I can't remember why, but someone, I don't think it was you, but for some reason I was led to Cinebook as a interesting, interesting comics.
Okay.
And, this sounded kind of interesting, and also I was aware that there was a film, which we'll get to a little bit, made a few years ago, based on the series as well. And this was a long-running series in Pilote magazine.
Pilote, yes. Which was edited by one of the Asterix blokes.
Ah, right.
René Goscinny.
Right. And ran from 1967 until 2010.
Yes, yeah, that's
I'm not sure if
impressive.
that entire run was in Pilote magazine, or I suspect it probably morphed into something else. But anyway, we're talking this. You read the same corrected volume, right?
Well, so I'm not sure about that, in as much as I downloaded mine from Kindle or on Kindle, and I'm wondering that one looks thicker potentially. Like how many is that?
Very thin.
It is okay. It is just one book.
It had, I'll tell you now, it had, I think, maybe 4 complete stories. Bad Dreams, City of Shifting Waters and Earth in Flames, The Empire of a Thousand Planets. Oh, was it just 3 then? Just 3 stories.
Okay, all right. So yes. So actually, funny enough, I haven't read the first one because I bought the I think I bought them separately. Like I bought them as separate volumes.
Oh, okay.
They're obviously being up for Kindle and being published that way. So the first one is called what? Bad Dreams?
Yes.
And
that's the one where he first meets Laureline.
Was that a prequel? Like, was that written later on, or is that actually?
No, I think that's the first one.
The one that's being sold as volume 1 by Cinebook is The City of Shifting Waters.
No, Bad Dreams, 1967, and it's the one where he meets Laura, because Laureline's from medieval times, right? Okay,
no, so you're gonna have to fill me in on this.
Right. Well, I didn't write specific notes. I thought we'd just kind of talk about it in general, right? Because there's a kind of tone to this comic, right? Which is so basically Valerian and Laureline, after he discovers her in the first volume, they some kind of agents, spatio-temporal agents, right?
Yes. Yep.
Which basically just means that they jump about in time and space, right?
Yes. Very Doctor Who-y.
Kind of, yeah. And yes, I suppose, like, I mean, I don't know, I'm reading this in translation anyway, but it seems there's no Babel fish like Hitchhiker's Guide. Everyone just speaks French.
Understands everyone. Yeah, I assume.
The galaxy, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, just like in Doctor Who, everyone speaks English, right? But
yes.
But yeah, so basically Valerian specifically, and Laureline just tags along, I guess, are assigned specific. There seems to be one. I don't know if he was Zotbul, is that his name, or the villain in all of these stories. I don't know if he was the villain all the way to 2010, but he is in this first volume, and he seems, intent on, taking over the world in some way or another. Some plan that involves going either forward in time or back in time and harnessing some kind of power, and then they have to go after him. And there's a lot of talk about how they're not allowed to upset. It's quite interesting. I quite like what they do here. Sometimes they, for instance, there's some kind of device that will in the future make human life better and more tolerable. And because of their adventures, the person is in danger of inventing it earlier than they would have. And they deliberately make sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Because they're not allowed to upset the timeline, right? I mean, I don't know. This stuff is always problematic. Look, if you really look into it in great detail, I think it never really quite equals out, right? Once you start messing around in this stuff, it's but anyway, it's quite nice. It's a nice little, like, the fact that they and I think, like everything in this comic, is if you were to take it very seriously, then it would probably frustrate you to the point that your head would explode, right? Because it's kind of a weird mix of, there's a little bit of, not hard SF exactly, but there's a little bit of more thoughtful SF concepts and ideas, but also at the same time there's a lot of like Barbarella style kind of fantasy shenanigans.
I did like in the City of Shifting Waters the part where Laureline's, she gets shrunk down at some point, and then she gets regrown, but for some reason he even stops to make a comment like, oh, funny that your clothes didn't grow as quickly as
Although I don't know how it progressed in because like I said, you've only read this volume. It's not that sexy though. I thought it would be. It's not that sexy at all, and Laureline certainly isn't. In fact, in the comic, apart from that one scene you mentioned, which isn't graphic in any way, she's almost always clad head to toe in some kind of space gear or something. And in fact, I think they tried to sex her up more in the film. Than in the comic. Again, unless in later comics, maybe because Luc Besson was drawing on the entire history of the comic, right? So and I don't know, it probably did mutate as the stories went along.
Yes, I think that, one thing when I was reading the Wikipedia entry, they kind of mentioned that, in the later stories get further and further away from a very simple binary good and evil kind of a thing. So I wonder if that Zombol, or however you say his name, if he continues to be, because he's a bit of a Ming the Merciless / the Master. I mean, he even got the goatee like that, and it seemed as though, because I'll give that to the movie. The movie definitely attempted to kind of, although it had a mustache twirling villain, but there was also an element of misunderstood motivations and,
but from the beginning, I would say I didn't even feel necessarily. What I liked about this was it has this kind of how could I say, it had its view of this galaxy is very much it's very inclusive, isn't it? It's a very diverse range of how could I say, like, I suppose one of the things that people didn't like about the recent adaptation of Dune, for example, was, and this is in the book. So in the book, obviously, Frank Herbert's taken certain elements of Arabic
Middle Eastern cultures,
and put a spacey spin on it, right? And I suppose you could argue in the latest, the Denis Villeneuve film, which I did enjoy, that stuff's a little bit like, it's made to seem very kind of serious and poor-faced and grim, and there's no fun. So even though I don't think that's the intention, in the same way as the 300 film kind of really demonized the Persians, there's that slight element in that they're like almost like this kind of,
I do think there were some concerns about the fact that the Fremen, for example, that virtually none of them are actually played by actors who have the ethnicity from the Middle East.
Right.
I do think that was another complaint, is that the book in some ways, Dune, is fairly respectful of,
right.
You know, I think people were frustrated. Yeah, it was a bunch of
whereas
American.
in Valerian, it's a lot more knockabout, right? And
Yes.
and you have these like souks and things, and it all seems there seems it's all just a big wide world of color and different.
Yeah.
None of it seems necessarily like, oh, these are the evil people over here, and these,
Yes.
you know, it's kind of relative, but not in a heavy-handed way, just in a bouncing about kind of colorful adventure. And it's I rather enjoyed these stories, I have to admit. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think what took me the longest to get used to at the beginning was the art style, because it was more. I mean, it made sense for me when I realized that it was kind of yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Speaking of Asterix, it's got that kind of
yes. Yeah. That's what I didn't expect that, and apparently it doesn't. Like later on, he kind of adjusted his style, I think, and apparently the later volumes are quite a bit more realistic, maybe more Wally Wood and less.
I was going to say that's a shame, but I don't know. It might work because it wouldn't be fair. I haven't read them, but it's a shame because I do like that combination here. I like that it's
a high concept with a kind of almost like a Mad Magazine, or as you said, Asterix the Gaul kind of a drawing approach. But I mean, that said, it's mostly with the character designs, the actual the design of the spacecraft, the design of like the buildings and castles, the design of the aliens. It's all incredibly well done. Like this is somebody who's an absolutely fertile imagination and a complete command of his skill set and his materials. Like, you know, it is beautifully drawn. It was just that the main characters and the characters themselves are quite cartoony looking in those first. But once I got over that first, I'd be like, oh, this is not really what I wasn't expecting this. Then it didn't bother me as much.
I liked how it just bounced around and like, and because I tend so one of the things that, again, if you look this up and you know, people talk about, for example, how much did Star Wars take from these, and I'm not sure exactly if the jury's out still on that or whatever, but what I appreciated about this was like I've always found the Star Wars films massively boring because there's like Luke Skywalker and all those kind of, they're so fucking bland, and and the comedies either, you know, dwarf in a bucket of water kind of, or it's this poor-faced crap about using the Force and all that shit. Like for me, it doesn't. What I liked about this was it's neither one. It's straight down the middle. Like they've got the balance just right. It's never too serious, but also at the same time, it's not goofy. It's
not lowbrow, but it's breezy.
No. Yeah,
you know, it's breezy and highbrow. Which is a weird combination.
It's nice. I liked it. It was a toy. I didn't necessarily something I thought I would seek out, but reading them, they were there, and they did remind me a little bit actually of the Asterix stuff is a little bit like that,
which is kind of the same. You're right. It is. I mean, a lot of the jokes and a lot of the stuff are more adult. When you go back and read them as an adult, you're like, oh, okay, there's clearly a secondary level that you can read this on, and then the very fact that it's all about the resistance.
They rip along, considering that some of the speech bubbles are quite overstuffed. From time to time, it rips along. You know, it's a little bit of an exposition dump here and there, but I don't have a problem with it because it's a launch pad for, you know, once it it bounces around all this, kind of, and then it's like, that was a kind of fun story, and then it's on to the next one. It's and full of imaginative. It's like you said,
that's what surprised me. You know, with something like there was, you know, you stop on a panel, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's cool, and then you think about it for a moment, you're like, hang on, that ship has solar panels on it, but this is, when was this done? Like this is, you know, 1960 what? You know, like, and they look exactly how we've actually designed solar panels today. You know, so yeah, just really.
and Sun Ra is in it.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. That's a strange moment, for sure.
Because it's not the Sun Ra, but he looks like Sun Ra, and his name
is Sun Ra or Sun Ray, possibly.
Yeah,
Sun Ray or Sun Ray.
The first time he's introduced, he is dressed like Sun Ra.
Sun Ra, yeah.
So I thought that was kind of.
And Sun Ra apparently is a gangster in a post-apocalyptic 1986 or something like that.
But that was an interesting, weird reference. Because again, I mean, how many people were clued in and listening to Sun Ra as well, outside of jazz?
But these freaks must have been, for sure. You like read these comics, there's no question that they, I would imagine, again, you think about like, when does magma, there's a kind of this weird resurgence in French kind of science fiction around this time. And I was when I was reading about when they first were going to do a comic, the original idea was to do a Western, but then they were so overstuffed at the time because of, there was Blueberry, I think it's called.
Oh yes, the Western one, yeah.
Yeah, Mobius, and so then they had this idea of like, well, let's do a science fiction thing, and there was nobody doing a science fiction comic at the time in France. And then, I mean, this is before Mobius himself starts to do, so it does feel like these guys really mapped out the territory in a way. Right.
Yeah, a pre-Metal Hurlant and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I just realized as well, now that you don't have that first episode, you are probably wondering what the fuck I was talking about when I sent you that message about the soothe bubble.
Yes, I was.
Yes, that doesn't appear in there.
I actually Googled it, and I was like, I couldn't find any reference to it.
No, in that first strip, they have this thing called a soothe bubble, where it's like, if you get stressed, you just put your head in this bubble and it just calms you down.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, and there's also prison bubbles as well.
Yes, I did. The prison bubbles I did see. Yes,
they were cool. Yeah. I liked bubble. It reminded me of the rover in The Prisoner as well, right?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
And but I mean, like I would say in terms of that question, that the age-old Star Wars question. I mean, I think what Star Wars pilfered from more than anything else, when it comes to comics, was just the images. Like the designs of the spacecraft, the designs of the space suits. You'll see, Mobius, and you'll see, I think, this very much. I mean, there's even a guy who's wearing a Boba Fett helmet in
right.
in one of these things. Like,
anyway, that's far too much Star Wars, because there's about 8 million squillion other YouTube videos about Star Wars, and not too many about Valerian. So
sure thing.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit of a fascist.
Just a bit of stickler when it comes to that.
Yes. It's one of my pet peeves, is quite how much oxygen in the room that Star Wars takes up.
That George Lucas has been sucking up. But yeah, I as I said, the other thing that made me think of a little bit was then how much, again, ignoring America completely, but like how much cross-pollination there is between Japan and France. And some of this made me think of some of that early sort of actually, it's funny, when Jennifer was looking at this, she said it reminds her a little bit of some of the early Tezuka stuff.
All right, yeah.
Again, with that weird mix of highbrow with kind of cutesy or more cartoony looking drawings,
Yeah, no, that's worth noting as well, for sure. I think, I mean, if I'm going to be totally honest, I did enjoy reading It Was a Breeze, and it's not quite exactly in my wheelhouse of like, oh my God, I have to read all this stuff. It's not, it doesn't quite speak, but it's something I think I will return to, but hopefully, I'll find random volumes at used bookstores or something like that, rather than I'm going to go out and get the whole set straight away. But that's just more, my particular taste in things that I get obsessed about and don't. But no, I like this comic. It's a lot of fun, isn't it? I can see why Luc Besson did want to make this film version. I mean, do we want to talk a little bit about the film version? or do you have some more to say about the comic?
No. I mean, yeah, it's what's interesting to me about that. Actually, it's funny. Did you notice at the end of one of these volumes there actually is a bunch of pictures? I didn't notice this before. There's a bunch of pictures where they've placed, getting back to Star Wars, side by side images from Star Wars with anyway,
which I'm not entirely. It's like the end of if you ever watch that documentary, Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yes.
Which is very interesting and interesting to know about that. But then at the end, when they put like panels from his essentially comic next to, and I'm just thinking, no, like that's
right.
There's so many things
you're stretching.
Like there's so many things, because that documentary takes, it's fine, just talk about, you don't have to end with, so in conclusion every film ever made is basically, it's like no, dial it down a bit, motherfucker. Like, it's an interesting story enough, you don't have to go there. Again, today's old man rallies against modern hyperbole.
But yeah, so the movie's interesting in that, I mean, obviously I saw The Fifth Element way back when it came out in the cinema, you know, and understood.
Did you like Fifth Element back in the day? Because I know it divided people. I liked Fifth Element when I first saw it.
Yes, I did too. My wife is laughing in disgust because she did not. I think she's laughing because apparently she thinks the only thing I enjoyed was Mila Jovovich running around in a Band-Aid.
Well, it didn't. It certainly didn't hurt the overall enjoyment.
Right. But because I had seen, I had enjoyed the heavy metal movie, right? And it felt to me like it was a live action version of a couple of like that. There was the Harry Canyon segment.
I've never seen the heavy metal film.
Okay. Sure. That's weird. Anyway, so yeah.
I mean, I'd like to. I'm sure I have a copy. I just never got around to it.
Things that's been a part of my lexicon since I was 16 or whatever, and
okay.
So I've seen it. Now, that said, I don't think it's actually that good. It's just something that you see at a certain age, and therefore it makes a certain impression.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons I haven't seen it, because I realized I missed the boat, and I thought,
I think you might have.
This probably isn't.
I doubt. But it's also an anthology, and each segment is animated differently. And so some are stronger than others as well,
Right.
But anyway, there is a segment which I do feel like some of the characters are borrowed from, But then again, it all comes back to, I mean, how much of this is just Mobius as well, being kind of pilfered from. But yeah, anyway. But I guess when he was making the film, The Fifth Element, one of the designers was, how do you say his name?
Well, I've already fucked it up once, so you can...
Jean-Claude Mézières, maybe.
There we go.
Jean-Claude was.
You do the same thing I do in French, which is like, just make a Frenchy sound when you say it. Hope you get away with it.
Yeah. Exactly. So he was on set doing the designs, and I guess directly, maybe you've already read this, but directly said to Luc Besson, like, why are we making this piece of shit? Why aren't we making the Valerian movie?
Right.
And Luc Besson told him it's impossible.
Why doesn't Luc Besson have a French accent?
Well, because he doesn't,
Just to differentiate the two.
Yeah,
right.
C'est impossible. Yeah, but he just said that technology just didn't exist at the time. And then he said it was after he went to see Avatar that he said, okay.
Yeah, this felt
technology
does exist. A bit Avatar-y. That opening scene with those people with the pearls and
in the vaginas living in the clams.
Yeah, I was
the vagina clams.
Quite glad when spaceships started crashing on top of them. I'd had enough of them.
I like the beach, Clive. I like the beach.
I like the beach. I didn't like those and the stupid little things that shit pearls or whatever the fuck they do.
Okay. I wondered, I obviously I wondered which parts are borrowed from which books, or was it an entirely original story just featuring the characters and setting? But yeah, the movie's not entirely successful. I mean, it has its moments.
I would say it's almost not. I mean, I was keen to go back and watch Fifth Element just because I was wondering if, because I did find this film quite irritating in the way that I know lots of people found Fifth Element to be, but I didn't. Okay. I was just wondering if I've changed and now I might enjoy Fifth Element less, or if this is just not as good. I appreciated, I suppose, that it did at least aim for that. You know, it is very freewheeling and
breezy,
bounces around and very colorful. So they kind of, in a way, you could argue it's relatively faithful, right? But for me, it might just be a casting issue as well. I mean,
yes, I didn't buy that guy as Valerian.
I don't mind Inhan. He was very good in that Chronicle film, the one where all the teenagers get superpowers. And
I haven't seen it, so I wondered what his thing was. You know how there's always a thing that an actor does that kind of makes their name.
Yeah, so he was in that.
And I wondered what his thing, because the only thing I've seen him in was in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where his eye bags come in handy because he's terminally ill.
Oh, okay.
But
he's in that, and he was also, I think, I haven't seen it, but he was in that because it was the same director who went on to make the Fantastic Four remake, which everyone hated, right?
Oh yes, yeah, okay, sure.
I didn't see that myself, but
but if you close your eyes, he also sounds exactly like. At first, I thought he was kind of like vaguely like Brad Pitt as Floyd in True Romance, but then when I closed my eyes or I looked away from the screen, I realized he just sounds exactly like Keanu Reeves.
Oh,
like
right, okay.
Exactly like him, and that was also a bit disconcerting as well, because he's not as good looking as either Brad Pitt or Keanu Reeves.
No, considering that Valerian, especially this, I mean, again, that was the thing as well. Going by the first volume, this is not the Valerian and Laureline of the comics I read.
No,
at all.
No.
Like,
her hair wasn't red enough for one thing.
It's like they may evolve, they may be totally different in future volumes, but it was like, especially, yeah, he's supposed to be this kind of suave womanizer or something, and all that, and she, it was just, it didn't seem, it seemed all wrong. And then even if you accept that version of it, he's not a suave womanizer. He looks about 12.
That's the age thing was the biggest thing that threw me. I said that to Jen. I was like, because they established at some point he's been in the service for 9 years. I'm like, was he 7? Like when he got the job? Like what?
She equips herself slightly better as Laureline, but then again, we may be straying into the same territory about Mila Jovovich and not armband.
Yes, my wife was particularly impressed when my friend Tavis admitted shortly after the movie, he was like, I really found her attractive until she started to talk in English. Like, but when she was gabbling in baby talk in the the one strip of material for the first half of the movie,
says a lot about a man.
Anyway,
so I'll be honest, I didn't really make it through this film. I think I got about halfway, 30 minutes.
Had you seen it before or not?
No.
Okay.
I got 30 minutes into it, and then I started speed watching it.
Okay.
And then even speed watching it, I didn't even make it. I was like, fuck this, I don't need to know.
Well, Jen had seen it before, so it was the second time she ended up seeing it, and she said she was trying to remember. She's like, I think this is the movie where there's a point at which about a third of the way in where it lost me, and we got to that place, and I was like, oh yeah. And it was the part where the kind of like, and again, it's funny because we mentioned before that the comics themselves don't seem to have any kind of like, and I know you like to bring things back to Star Wars, so let's bring things back to Star Wars for a moment, Clive.
You sure you don't want to mention Wolf and Cub first?
No, I don't see any point today.
Bingo today then. Eddie hasn't even phoned me.
So when they did the prequels some years back, there were a lot of complaints about the grossly racist caricature alien races that appeared in the first couple of those prequels, right? The Asiatic aliens and the little Jewish flying alien, and so on. So which was all very well, was absolutely true. That those movies are ridiculously, that's not something you really see in the comics. but the part where they go in and there's the kind of like I don't know what they're supposed to be, but it's very kind of like Tarzan-y, like 1890s kind of tribes people, you know, with the big king eating all the various foods and spitting them out, and the kind of the whole comedy natives thing. Now they're aliens, but it's still red, like pretty broad and pretty cheesy and pretty racist, if you can be racist by creating alien tribes people, right? And that was, I think that was when Jen said, yeah, this was when the movie, and it did, I could see that. I was kind of like, yeah, this is getting
interesting. As well, they swapped out one jazz legend for another. So Sun Ra, but and Cox in this.
Yes, yes, you're right.
Which was peculiar.
Not Rihanna. I thought you were going to go with Rihanna there because she's also in there.
Well, I don't know who she is because I'm old. But
okay, all right. Yeah. You don't know what the kids are listening to these days.
Was she the one who was the there was that strip routine?
Yes, the shape-shifting alien, yeah.
Right, okay, right, yes. I think wasn't she also in that shitty battleship film?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Possibly. I don't usually watch movies based on board games, Clive.
Yeah, well, in that case, you're quite right.
Oh, shit! With the exception of Jumanji, apparently, I'm being told.
But again, that's something to do with women running around with that many clothes on, I suspect.
Oh yes, from What's Her Pickle from Doctor Who.
I'm on to you.
Yep. That'll be that's another bingo game. But yeah, no, I mean, I thought they were fun. As I said, I thought they were better as comics than they were as a movie. Clearly, I'm sure there's a good movie to be made. But I almost wish the movie was made, but then I always do, you know, back in 1969.
Right.
By an Italian director or a French director, like something Barbarella E, you know.
Right.
You know, with a Sean Connery type, you know, or maybe a slightly skinnier Sean Connery type as your Valerian, you know. Then you can have your kind of like breezy, sexy, James Bondy space fun, right?
Yeah, or you know, just leave it alone as well as the other option, right? Just
don't make a movie.
Yeah. There's always there's a animated series as well, isn't there? Which I haven't had a chance to see. I can see that has a potential for maybe working a bit better. There was a French Valerian and Laureline TV series that could prove.
Yep, could be good.
Anyway, I think that's it. Yeah. So until next time, for your next fix of Prolix Comics Bollix. Should we say something French maybe?
Au revoir.
There we go. That'll do.
Arrivederci, but is that Italian?
Yeah.
Okay. The wife says that's Italian.
Yes. I think everyone in the whole world said that's Italian.
Okay.
Right. Zut.